Thank you. Well, thanks so much. Appreciate the introduction. Thank you all for being here. It's great to be back in New England. You know, I'm a native Floridian, born and bred, but I did spend 7 years of my life in New England for education. And I say that I'm one of the very few people in this country who can say that I made it through both Harvard and Yale and came out more conservative than when I went in. It's not easy to do when you're talking about that. We also have at home, my wife, we've got a 6, 5, and 3-year-old kids. They're native Floridians. They have never seen snow before. So part of our goals in this campaign over the next 90 to 100 days, being between Iowa and New Hampshire, they're going to get to see snow, hopefully, for the first time. And we're trying to figure out, is it going to be in New Hampshire or is it going to be Iowa first? But either way, we're going to get them to be able to do snowballs and all the things that they want to be able to do. You know, I was a blue-collar kid growing up in Florida. My mom was a nurse. My father worked for Nielsen TV ratings, where they actually had to put a device on the family's cable boxes back then. And I started working minimum wage jobs. I was a baseball player all growing up, had very good youth baseball, high school baseball, and my horizons were basically focused on that. I got recruited to go to places like Yale and Princeton for baseball. And I had never been to New England in my life, never thought to be able to do anything like that. And so I show up my first day on campus doing what somebody from the west coast of Florida would do. I wore flip-flops, I wore jean shorts, and I wore a t-shirt. Not something that was necessarily in vogue on an Ivy League campus, much less when you had kids that went to Andover Academy and all these other places. So it was a different culture for me, but throughout the whole time, I just kept working hard. So I did school, I did sports, and I worked every odd job under the sun to be able to get through school and to be able to advance myself, starting with $6 an hour, working through as many things I can. By the time I graduated, I was known as the most employable kid on campus. If someone needed something, I'd just get random phone calls. Hey, can you do this? Can you do that? And we did. And so that was kind of the ethic I had. But my view was, look, I want to be able to do well in this world. America gives me the opportunity, so I'm going to work hard to put myself in a position to do it. I ended up in New England at Harvard Law School. And then that was after September 11th, and so I made a different career choice. But I can say I was up here when the Red Sox won the World Series in 2004 and broke the curse. And I'll tell you, it was a big deal to be up here. And for all 7 years I was up here, I was rooting for the Red Sox over the Yankees. Don't worry about that. In fact, my first year in college, one of my friends that I'd played youth baseball with growing up, his father was actually managing Boston at the time, Jimmy Williams. He was a great guy. And he called me one day and said, hey, I'm going to go to a game at Fenway. Do you want to go? I'm like, of course I want to go. I've never been. So we got in a car from Connecticut, drove up. You know, you show up, and, you know, it's a really neat experience. You know, tickets are at will call. And it's me and another probably freshman or sophomore, 18, 19-year-old kids. And we hand the ticket to the usher. And, you know, this is like a crusty veteran usher. And he looks at it. And these are pretty good seats, and he's looking at us. He's like, what's going on here? He's like, all right, walks us up. We're literally right next to the dugout. You know, you look straight ahead. You have the green monster. And then after the game, we were in the office with Jimmy, and you see Pedro Martinez and all these other people. So I got a really intimate view of Fenway Park for my first experience, and I'll never forget it. It was something that we already did. So I was up here for that, and it was a huge deal, and it was really exciting. But I made the decision to join the military, to volunteer, and to volunteer to eventually serve in Iraq. And so when you see what's going on with Israel and Hamas, a lot of that brings back memories with respect to the war on terrorism. I spent time in Guantanamo Bay at the detention facility on active duty, and then we were in places like Fallujah and Ramadi and al-Assad, western Iraq, a lot of al-Qaeda in Iraq. And there was some bad stuff that happened, but I'll tell you, I don't think I ever saw or heard or read a report of anything approaching the level of barbarism that we saw over the weekend with respect to Hamas, the decapitation of babies, executing elderly people. It really reached a new level of depths of depravity, and it just shows you that there is evil in this world. The other thing that I remember from being over in Iraq was, in spite of all the talk of al-Qaeda and the Sunni terrorists, and that was real, most of the combat deaths that our folks were facing were from Shia militias that were funded by the Iranian government. And we lost hundreds of U.S. troops, probably over 1,000 during that period. And so you want to talk about Iran funding Hamas and the Hezbollahs. They've been doing this for decades. They funded the attacks on our Marine barracks in 1983 in Beirut. So I'm no stranger to the role that Iran plays in all of that. So we did that. And I end up, they talked about some of the political, wasn't necessarily something I had set out to do, but by age 40, I end up the governor of Florida, the country's third largest state and the 13th largest economy in the entire world if we were our own country. So I'm really a testament to the American dream, because a lot of people would not have bet their chips that I would end up be running for president, be elected governor, any of this stuff. Certainly I would not have predicted that at the time. And I'm running for president now because I think we're in danger of being the first generation of Americans that are going to leave to our kids and grandkids an America that's less prosperous and less free than the one that we inherited. You look what's happening in the world. You look at our economic problems at home. You look at the state of our cities. You look at all these issues. We see the country in a period of decline. Now, I don't think that decline is inevitable. I think the decline is a choice. And so it's going to fall to us to make the types of decisions and exercise the type of leadership that are going to reverse that decline, that are going to usher in an American revival, and that are going to give this country a new birth of freedom. And that's exactly what I intend to do as the next president of the United States. And we'll start with the economy. We will reverse the trends that we're seeing. Why are we seeing higher prices? Why are we seeing interest rates with that? It was government-induced by their response to COVID, which was a total disaster, by borrowing and printing trillions and trillions of dollars, acting like that wasn't going to cause disruptions in the economy. Of course it's going to. You can't spend money and borrow and print money without consequence. We need to discipline the Congress, and I'll be willing to do that as president with the veto pen. We also have too much bureaucracy, too much red tape that bears down and stifles innovation, particularly for small businesses. We're going to get rid of that, and we will utilize the energy resources that we have in this country. We have more energy resources, if you look at places like the Marcellus Shale, than any country in the entire world. It'll help for you to pay lower gas prices. It'll help to pay less for everything throughout the economy when the energy prices are lower. It's good for jobs. It's good for our industrial base, but it's good for our national security. You look at Iran, you look at Russia, you look at China doing a Green New Deal type policy where we try to kneecap that production. That benefits them. Us being the dominant energy producer in this world hurts all the right people. We will make sure we'll do that. That'll be good for the economy, but it'll be good for our country. We're also going to restore sovereignty in this country. You cannot be a nation state and have 7 million people pouring across your border illegally. Do you not think that our enemies around the world have not exploited that open border? We know people have come from China and Iran and Russia throughout the Middle East. That happens every day, and yet it's just happening without really a care in the world by the powers that be. Of course, that's also led to fentanyl coming into this country in levels that we've never seen before, and it's triggered deaths in this country at levels we have never seen before. We're losing over 100,000 people a year because of the opioid epidemic. And look, addiction's a tough thing, but this is not limited to people that are habitual drug users. You will have students who think that they're taking a pill to relieve stress, and it happens to be laced with fentanyl. And they take one pill and they die. And I've met a lot of the angel moms throughout the United States who've had this happen, where they've lost a loved one. We had a situation in Florida. A family was renting an Airbnb unit. 18-month-old baby crawling on the carpet. There happened to be residue from fentanyl from the previous tenant. And the baby died just by coming in contact with that fentanyl. So this has got to stop. We're going to declare it a national emergency on day one. We're going to marshal all available resources, including our military, to stop the invasion of this country. And yes, I'm going to build the wall. You know, Donald Trump promised in 2016 he would build the wall and have Mexico pay for it. And more recently, he was in Iowa. He says, well, there was no mechanism that he could make Mexico pay. He didn't have a legal way to do it and all this other stuff. Now, that's not what he said in 2016, because I went to those rallies. He was saying Mexico's going to pay. So he didn't do that. The reality is you actually can have Mexico pay. They're just going to fork over money, you can impose fees on the remittances that foreign nationals send back to Mexico who work in the United States or in Central America. You'd raise billions and billions of dollars. I'd rather they pay for it than have it be paid by the general taxpayer. So we're going to do that. We'll get the job done. But more important than that, we're going to treat the Mexican drug cartels like foreign terrorist organizations. They are invading this country, they are killing these people, and we're going to use lethal force to put them in their place. We're also going to ensure that our military is the strongest in the world and that we remain the world's leading superpower. We are not on a trajectory to continue being the world's dominant superpower, and what happened in Israel reminds us that there's a lot that's going on with terrorism still, as much as some of us would hope that that's not the case. It's real. But we're also in a period where we do have a great power rival with the Communist Party of China. They want to be able to eclipse this country economically. They want to be able to eclipse this country militarily. And if they're able to win that battle over the next decade, decade and a half, that will affect the lives of every American in a really, really significant way. So we're going to ensure that we remain the top economy, that we remain the top military, and that we're able to deter Chinese ambitions, particularly in the Indo-Pacific. And when we do that, 21st century will still be an American century. We're also going to ensure that schools in this country focus on traditional education, not on indoctrination. We should have, I'm a parent of a 6, a 5, and a 3-year-old. You know, my kids are in these early grades. We had to fight the fight in Florida to say, you know what? We're going to teach math, we're going to teach reading, we're going to teach science. We're not going to teach first graders that they can have interchangeable genders. That is not appropriate. That is not right. So we've stood by the rights of parents, and I think parents have the right to direct the education and upbringing of their kids. That should be the case all across this country, including choosing the school of their choice like they can do in Florida. And you know how I know that works? Because I grew up in Florida. We were not well regarded in education at the time. We're now fully invested in parental choice, and we finished 3rd and 4th respectively in 4th grade reading and 4th grade math in the 2022 Nations Report Card. So it works, and we need to do that from coast to coast. We also have to have a situation that whether you live in a blue state, a red state, a blue city, a red city, criminals are held accountable for their misconduct. If you do the crime, you do the time. What's happening in a lot of our cities is they've turned their back on the rule of law. They've put a political agenda over accountability. These cities have corroded, and I know because people move to Florida and they tell me about it. Everyone has a right to raise their family in peace and security, and we're going to make sure the rule of law reigns supreme. And then finally, we need to restore the proper understanding of the U.S. Constitution. Our founding fathers created 3 branches of government. They did not create a 4th branch of government, an administrative bureaucracy that governs almost irrespective of elections. Government should be limited, and it should work alongside us. It should not be unaccountable and weaponized against us. And part of what I'll do is we're going to usher in a reckoning for all the agencies that were involved in the COVID-19 policies. Those policies hurt a lot of people. They hurt people's jobs. They hurt kids' education. They hurt people's ability to choose whether they wanted to work or not because of some of the mandates. And nobody has been held accountable for it. Florida rejected that, and the state has never done better. And we had the lowest excess mortality in the entire Sun Belt, partially because we let people make their own decisions. So CDC, NIH, FDA, all these agencies have failed the American people. We're going to bring a reckoning that we're going to make sure there's accountability so that this never happens in our country again. And there's many more things we're going to do. I think part of what people say is, okay, well, how do you trust someone running for office? What's about you that would lead to you being able to do this? And I think people can trust me to do it because I'm the only one running for office today that has actually accomplished everything I told the voters I would accomplish. We delivered on 100% of our promises. Compare what's going on in Washington, D.C. right now with not even being able to pick a speaker. In Florida, we don't do political empty calories. We don't do showmanship. It's not a game. It's about delivering results, and that's how we focus our leadership on, and the results we've been able to produce are second to none. We've run massive budget surpluses every year I've been governor. We've paid down almost 25% of the state's total outstanding debt just since I've been governor that we've accumulated throughout the entire history of the state. Of course, we have no income tax, and I know people in New Hampshire appreciate that because, anytime I go northeast, I don't find a lot of places hospitable to taxpayers. You got that one little dot in New England, the live free or die state, so we appreciate that, but we have the second lowest per capita tax burden in the entire country. We have universal school choice, and so you have a lot of low-income moms that have been able to send their kids to the school of their choice. We have charter schools, which are public schools, but not run by the school district. If you took the 363,000 charter students in Florida, disproportionately low income, disproportionately racial and ethnic minorities, if they were their own state, those 363,000 students would rank one of the top 5 performing states in the entire country. So we've delivered results on education, but we've also understood that a 4-year brick and ivy university, as much as we like some of the universities, that's not the only way you can be successful. We've created workforce education as a centerpiece of our strategy to give people more opportunities and to help our economy because we need this skilled labor, and we're proud of doing that. We've cracked down on illegal immigration by doing things like banning sanctuary cities. We've kneecapped ESG, environment, social governance. Basically, it's being used by private sector to impose ideological agenda on society, but these are policies that could never win at the ballot box, and they're trying to do it through asset managers and Wall Street banks. So we said no for our pension fund. We took $2 billion away from BlackRock, who was managing that, and they have an agenda. And we said the rating agencies can't use ESG when they rate our state and municipal bonds. And so we fought back against that. We're not going to be successful as an economy if every business becomes hyper-politicized. We've prohibited the purchase of land by the Chinese Communist Party and its affiliates. They're trying to get farmland. They're trying to get land near military bases. Not happening in the state of Florida. We've enacted the Parents' Bill of Rights to confirm our view that parents have the fundamental right to direct the education and upbringing of their kids. We've actually made a dent in the opioid crisis. Now, you talk about the supply and the cartels. We've done bills to hold dealers, and we got to do that. You got to fight supply. But you also got to fight demand, and you got to fight from the treatment perspective. So Florida enacted a coordinated opioid recovery network, probably in about 27 counties now we have. And what it is someone goes into the hospital, they overdose. If you put them just right back on the street to their own volition, they are likely going to relapse and eventually will likely have a fatal overdose. That's pretty much what happens. So when you have an intervention, you provide support, you link them with the appropriate treatment. We have less than a 10% relapse rate of the people that have been involved in that. And year over year, I think we're the only state in the country that actually had a decline in overdose deaths outright. And that's not happening anywhere in the country. So we've taken on that issue and done very well with it. And then, of course, we had to make a decision when COVID hit. And while so many states were throwing the rights of their citizens out the window, we had to make a decision, are we going to let our state descend into some type of Faucian dystopia where people's livelihoods were destroyed and their freedoms were curtailed, or were we going to empower people with information so they could make the best decisions for themselves? Are we going to make sure our kids get an education? Are we going to make sure that we save these businesses? And we had to make decisions which were not popular at the time, certainly with the media, not popular with the bureaucracy, not popular with the other party, and even within my own party weren't necessarily popular. But a leader has got to put the interests of the people he represents over protecting his own political hide. I didn't know what was going to happen to me. A lot of people told me you weren't going to be long for this world because you were cutting against the grain so much, but I was willing to let the chips fall where they may. And you know what? We were right on having kids in school. We were right on making sure businesses could succeed and thrive. We were right on not imposing mandates for things like COVID shots on people. And you know how I know we're right? Because Florida currently ranks #1 for economy by CNBC, #1 for education by U.S. News and World Report. We're the #1 state in America for new business formations. We've led the nation in net in-migration. Every year since I've been governor, anytime Massachusetts raised the tax, I get more Florida residents. Chicago does something dumb, I get more Florida residents. You can set your clock to it. Our crime rate is at a 50-year low, even as crime has spiraled out of control in so many other areas around the country, and we're #1 for growth amongst all large states. So we promised we would do things. We've delivered results for the people that we represent. And at the end of the day, we can sit here and talk about all this stuff, the posturing to this. All that matters is whether you're producing results. So 2024 is make or break. Republicans need to stop making excuses. We're not going to get a mulligan on the 2024 election. We're either going to get the job done, we're going to be able to chart a better path for this country, or we're going to continue to dig ourselves deeper and deeper into a hole. As the nominee of the Republican Party, I'll get the job done for the voters. As a leader, I'll be someone that you can be proud of. And as your president, I promise I will not let you down. Thank you all for having me. God bless you.